Ask any number of CIOs for their top 5 IT concerns today, and you're likely to get some very similar answers. One that would likely make the CIO's list is how to increase productivity, lower cost, and mitigate risk in the enterprise data center. Now, if asked, these same CIOs would likely agree that some progress has been made in addressing these data center challenges over the past several years. However, many will say they remain frustrated. They were simply expecting better results and a bigger payout for their data center investments and technology upgrades thus far. In an effort to capture even greater efficiencies, CIOs and IT leaders are now taking a serious look at hyperconverged solutions to help meet their short-term and long-term IT goals. In this report, we'll explore the world of the hyperconverged infrastructure. By watching this program, viewers will gain knowledge and valuable insight into one of the fastest growing technology segments in the industry today. This program features technology expert Leo Galletta. Leo is the president and CEO of Converged Technology Group. The firm is an award-winning managed services partner based in Islandia, New York. There are several teaching points in this program. First, we'll review the challenges CIOs and business leaders are facing in their effort to reduce the cost and complexity of the enterprise data center. Next, we'll explore hyperconvergence and how this rising technology star can help organizations meet their critical IT goals. Now, if you are considering an investment in hyperconverged systems, you'll want to hear our discussion about the key questions to ask prospective solution vendors. We'll also present the benefits, challenges, cost, and return on investment associated with this computing environment. We'll conclude with several best practices for implementing a hyperconverged environment and hear added thoughts and advice from our expert, Leo Galletta. Now, let's begin our report. First, a review of the challenges CIOs and business leaders are facing in their effort to reduce the cost and complexity of their enterprise data center. Then, we'll explore hyperconvergence and how this new computing paradigm can help organizations meet their critical IT goals. According to Gartner analysts, the hyperconverged integrated systems market will experience phenomenal growth this year. A staggering 79% increase is forecast. In dollars and cents, that nets out to about a $2 billion market. In addition, Gartner predicts that hyperconverged infrastructure will make the move toward mainstream acceptance and use in the next 5 years. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's great, but I'm really not clear about what hyperconvergence is all about. What are the IT and business benefits? What are the differences between converged and hyperconverged? How about the cost and ROI? All very good questions indeed. Over the course of the next few minutes, we hope to provide you with answers to those very important questions. To get the conversation started, let's introduce our guest expert, Leo Galletta, President and CEO of Converged Technology Group. Leo, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you.
Now, Leo, the demands on CIOs and IT leaders today in regard to the data center are substantial, to say the least. Give us a sense of what challenges they're facing.
Okay, so Mike, the CIOs and the IT leaders that we're engaging with today, they're looking to implement solutions that drive measurable business outcomes. The measurable business outcomes that we discuss are around increasing revenue and productivity, reducing cost, and mitigating risk. So in specific to the data center, they're looking for solutions that reduce complexity in the data center and also reduce the risk of multi-vendor interoperability. So quite often when we're engaging, they have one manufacturer for the network, one manufacturer for the compute, and one manufacturer for the storage. In many cases, there's a lot of complexity that is put on the customer in order for them to be able to integrate those solutions. And at the end of the day, they're looking for something that's much more simplified. The other thing to consider is that they're looking to prepare the data centers to scale while considering both private and public cloud consumption strategies.
So what options do CIOs have to help deal with these challenges?
Okay, well, specifically to the private cloud, most CIOs and IT leaders are evaluating solutions that fall into the categories of integrated infrastructure, converged infrastructure, and hyperconverged infrastructure, which is the most emerging technology that we see in the market today.
Okay, Leo, I'd like to hear more about that. Just take us through each of the options and explain.
So integrated infrastructure are primarily based on reference architectures and validated designs. And this is a pre-validated, scalable compute storage and network infrastructure solution that leverages virtualization that most companies are currently using in a production environment today to predictably meet the needs of the enterprise business critical applications. From a converged perspective, what's happening is that they're consuming pre-integrated scalable compute storage and network infrastructure solutions that leverage virtualization, but also management, automation, and orchestration software that meet the needs of the business critical applications. It's important to note that the manufacturers leveraged the reference architectures and validated designs that inherently provided customers with insight in a way that they needed to integrate it in a way that they can then bundle together, enabling them to consume it in a new way. Now, what's happening over time is that customers are now evaluating these hyperconverged infrastructure solutions, and these are more software-based, pre-integrated, scalable solutions. Again, taking the compute, the storage, the network infrastructure that leverages virtualization, the management software, the automation and orchestration capabilities, and it's built on the idea of the software-defined data center. And this includes more and more aspects of the data center, including things like continuous data optimization and flexible scaling to meet the emerging needs of new applications that are driving businesses today.
You know, I'm sure that most IT professionals are familiar with the integrated and converged options you spoke of. But the third option, hyperconverged, might be somewhat new to them. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So hyperconvergence is a way to enable cloud-like economics at scale without compromising the performance, reliability, and availability you would expect in your own data center. So hyperconverged infrastructure provides very specific benefits in a data center, primarily around data efficiency. So the opportunity there is to reduce storage consumption, to improve the performance of the applications, to reduce ultimately the IOP requirements so that the business critical applications perform much more efficiently within the data center. There's a benefit around elasticity, meaning not only to be able to scale out, but also to be able to scale in resources as required by the business. And then it's built on VMware workloads or VM workloads. And the idea there is that existing IT staffs have existing virtualization expertise that they can utilize as part of a hyperconverged infrastructure deployment. There's inherent capabilities around data protection, virtual machine mobility, and most of these solutions have high availability capabilities built on cluster technologies. At the end of the day, it translates to a lower total cost of ownership for data center operations.
So Leo, please go over the differences between converged and hyperconverged. I want to be sure we all understand them.
Okay, so from a hyperconverged perspective, as it compares to converged, is that in a hyperconverged infrastructure, it's based on a software-defined approach. The underlying hardware is viewed as a commodity item, and you're looking to get the most out of the compute, storage, and networking resources that are available. Relying on a software abstraction layer to provide the business-critical application performance that's needed for the business, and ultimately includes features of continuous data optimization during the life cycle of the system to ensure that you're getting the most out of the investment. So historically, we took a very hardware-centric approach to the data center. We had silos of network, compute, and storage. Today, those elements are looked at more like a commodity, and based on a software abstraction layer, we're using automation, orchestration, and continuous data optimization to drive that reduced total cost of ownership that drive the business outcomes that organizations are looking for.
You know, I'm curious about hyperconvergence in the cloud. What can you tell us about that?
When we're engaging with CIOs and IT leaders, we're looking to differentiate between private and public cloud. Most of the solutions that we're representing as it pertains to hyperconverged infrastructure is for private cloud consumption. When customers are looking at a particular solution, part of what they're looking to do is evaluate what their private cloud strategy is, what their public cloud strategy is, and then when they make that decision, try to understand exactly how the hyperconverged infrastructure investment they're going to invest in will be able to extend into the public cloud, ultimately resulting in a hybrid cloud architecture. So it's important that we understand both their private as well as their public cloud strategy so that when they're making a decision about the hyperconverged infrastructure solution that they would be looking to put in their private cloud infrastructure, we have to make sure that it has the extensibility to be able to leverage public cloud resources as well so that we can help reduce the total cost of ownership and drive the business outcome.
Next, we'll discuss the key questions to ask vendors before committing to a hyperconverged infrastructure solution. In addition, we'll look at the benefits, challenges, and ROI you can typically expect with this type of computing environment. The process of vetting solution vendors and implementing new technology can be challenging at best. The story is just the same in the hyperconverged space. A recent article featured in Tech Target, authored by Neil Nicolason, CTO of OC Tanner, a Salt Lake City-based human resource consulting company, may be of help to our viewers in the process of selecting a hyperconvergence solution. In the article, Nicolason presents the key questions that he asked vendors about their hyperconverged solutions during his selection process. According to the article, the primary reason for OC Tanner's move to hyperconverged was to create high-performance cloud-like services that could be used for failover, replication, and incremental expansion. So, without further delay, here are the questions asked of the vendor candidates. The first question was, what hypervisor does the product support? According to Nicolason, this was critical because they still need to license the virtualization product that runs on the device, unless an open source option was utilized. The second question, does the design and architecture create real clusters? Nicolason adds that he and his colleagues at OC Tenor needed to make sure that the various nodes would replicate and fail over to each other. Some do this better than others, and some not well at all. The third question, can you vary the ratio of compute power and storage? He notes that the firm needed to match compute storage power to different use cases and so needed the ability to switch from compute intensive to storage intensive. Question number 4 was, how simple and easy is it to deploy in remote locations? Nicolason tells us that his team would be deploying the devices in different geographies, sometimes using local technical resources. The process needed to be nearly error-proof. Finally, the fifth question asked of the vendor was, would our hyperconverged infrastructure be a way to replace our legacy converged infrastructure, but at a lower cost? According to the article, the team wanted to shift spending from plumbing to innovation and hoped that this would help make that shift. So, in vetting the many hyperconverged options, Nicolason and his OC Tenor colleagues based their infrastructure decisions on those 5 key questions. Perhaps they'll be of help to you when considering your technology choices. With that information in mind, let's return to our guest expert, Leo Galletta, and talk about the benefits, challenges, and ROI you can expect with a hyperconverged infrastructure. Now, Leo, I'd like to know what's driving the hyperconverged market.
The hyperconverged market is primarily being driven by a desire for organizations to reduce the total cost of ownership of data center IT assets. When you look at the total cost of ownership, it's broken down into a couple different elements, the CapEx investment as well as the OpEx investment. And when a solution moves into the operational phase of its life cycle, a good majority of the expense as part of the total cost of ownership is continued IT operations. What's inherent in a hyperconverged solution is automation, orchestration, and continued data optimization services as part of that solution, which significantly drives down the operational cost while maintaining the data center infrastructure. This outcome aligns with the business objectives of continuously driving down operational expenses as a percentage of revenue, resulting in increased profitability.
So what's on your list of top benefits for hyperconverged?
Most of the CIOs that I'm speaking with, they're looking to be more agile as an organization. So that translates to what we call faster time to value or shorter provisioning times. It's much more efficient to implement and provision a hyperconverged infrastructure solution than it would be an integrated or converged infrastructure stack. The other thing they're looking to accomplish is a reduced footprint in the data center. So data center costs are escalating, and at the end of the day, they're looking for increased consolidation, and they're looking at the very expensive SAN architectures that they've had to maintain as part of their integrated or converged infrastructure solution. So this kind of helps eliminate the expensive SAN. The other thing they're looking to do is reduce operational complexity. So by leveraging this pre-validated, pre-integrated single-vendor solution, we move away from the risk associated with multi-vendor integration. They want predictable pay-as-you-go scalability with cloud-like economics, and they want to be able to do it in such a way that they can independently scale compute or storage, and some of the solutions that we represent are unique in that way. So at the end of the day, it's about increased IT productivity and lower total cost of ownership. By leveraging the inherent capabilities of automation, orchestration, continuous data optimization, and hyperconverged infrastructure, when we enable IT organizations to shift their capacity from day-to-day business operations to driving strategic outcomes aligned with business objectives.
Leo, what type of organization or business, in your opinion, is the best fit for the hyperconverged option?
So at the moment, we're seeing most of the adoption and most of the interest in mid-market commercial customers. We see very specific use cases for these organizations, primarily around server virtualization. So although most organizations have virtualization in production today, they're looking for increased ways to further consolidate and get better utilization of IT assets. For remote office deployments, so there's a great opportunity there because these systems are being managed through a single pane of glass or a single management interface. And for virtual desktop infrastructure, there's always an eye on how to reduce some of the end-user PC support costs. And VDI, leveraging hyperconverged infrastructure, is a very good use case that has some favorable economics. We feel that the current day solutions that we represent are more of the 2.0. There were some early innovators in this space, and some of the automated provisioning not only of the compute and the storage, but also the network above and beyond what had been done in the version 1.0 is starting to translate to improved economics for hyperconverged infrastructure.
Now, implementing new technology is never easy. What are the challenges organizations might face when making the move to hyperconverged?
Well, first and foremost, it's really important to have a detailed understanding of the existing production application environment. Each business-critical application has a unique workload, and what I can tell you is that when we work with different organizations, even though they might have the same common off-the-shelf application, no two organizations and no two I/O profiles are exactly the same. So it's really important to understand how these applications are running in their production environment on what infrastructure they have in place today. The other thing that's important to realize and to evaluate is what is their private as well as their public cloud strategy, and what do they expect to be the outcome? Is it a reduction in cost? Is it improved business agility? At the end of the day, are they looking to improve performance so they can increase productivity? So above and beyond the technical considerations, it's also important to anticipate the business expectations as well. In many cases, organizations are looking to reduce costs, mitigate risk. It's really important early on to document exactly how the current production infrastructure is being utilized, what the baseline performance looks like, to set the expectations regarding the expected business outcome, and then ultimately to be able to predict what the outcome is going to be as they migrate over to hyperconverged infrastructure, so that ultimately a customer can make the most informed decision about the solution.
Well, Leo, the decision on which route to follow with all this is a complicated one. How do you best evaluate your options?
Our recommendation for customers would be to partner with companies like a Converged Technology Group that would help them capture the business, technical, and financial requirements of the solution. In many cases, when I'm having conversations with CIOs and IT leaders, as recent as the last couple of days, I'm sitting down with them and we're saying, hey, we're not investing in technology for technology's sake. Ultimately, we're looking to drive a business and financial outcome. So it's really, really important to understand what those requirements are as we're making the recommendation. It's also important to evaluate the current options available in the market. Based on the rate of innovation that's happening in the hyperconverged marketplace, what we can tell you is that the early entrants may no longer be the market leaders. There's new companies coming to market every single quarter. Some of the tier 1 manufacturers are innovating at a breakneck speed, and the options that we had 3 months ago or 6 months ago aren't necessarily the most cost-effective or innovative solutions that are available today. So it's really important to understand that organizations are reestablishing themselves in the market, and there's more options today than there were over the last 6 to 12 months. And we're also tending to make recommendations around market-leading solutions. It's really important to understand the expected useful life of the asset. Right? These aren't decisions that are being made for something that's going to be in production for 12 months. It might be 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And by having alignment with tier 1 manufacturers, we understand that they've done the research, that they create the most reliable solutions, and they have the capability to make continued investments in the technology and in the platforms well into the foreseeable future so that the customers get the best return on investment.
Okay, so once you have decided on a hyperconverged solution and are preparing for implementation, what steps should you follow?
Okay, so the implementation steps for hyperconverged infrastructure are much like other technologies. We happen to use a phased methodology for the implementation of a hyperconverged infrastructure platform. For customers that are migrating off of legacy integrated infrastructure, you have to start off with detailed design and planning, and that's really around the technical design and planning. Then what you would do is you would stage the equipment in parallel to the production environment. You would integrate it into that production infrastructure, and ultimately what you're faced with is workload migration. And again, because you're leveraging existing IT skills, familiar with virtualization, that workload migration is fairly seamless. So for a greenfield scenario, the implementation methodology would be very similar. You'd start off with technical detailed design and planning, staging, implementation, and then ultimately you'd be deploying your new application on the hyperconverged infrastructure solution. Using tier 1 manufacturer technologies, we would be able to anticipate how that business-critical application would perform. It's also important to address the ongoing management and support aspects of the hyperconverged infrastructure, because after it goes into operations, we want to ensure that the system is behaving and performing as anticipated, and that if anything were to come up, that we can be proactive in response from an IT perspective.
Well, Leo, everyone is focused on budgets today. Can you talk about cost and ROI associated with a typical hyperconverged infrastructure?
Well, in some cases, we see financial outcomes that lead to as much as a 90% reduction in data center operational expenses. And again, it's important to kind of highlight that we're talking about total cost of ownership. It isn't a CapEx versus CapEx comparison. It's basically looking at the CapEx and OpEx expenses over the course of the asset's expected useful life and doing a comparison between the two. So it's really important to kind of differentiate between simply a CapEx investment versus total cost of ownership. The other thing we're seeing is as much as an 80% reduction in data center storage utilization or consumption. So some of the algorithms and the capabilities within software translate to unprecedented savings opportunities as it pertains to data center storage. And we're seeing as much as a 60% reduction, again, in total cost of ownership. The important thing to note is that these statistics are representative of what could happen, and that every single customer that we engage with has a unique scenario. They have a unique set of applications, and that their specific ROI is going to be unique to them. So again, as part of the due diligence that we would represent, as part of the way that we would engage, is that you need to have a very clear understanding of what your baseline environment looks like, and then you would financially model what it would cost you in terms of business as usual, and then from there you'd be able to then represent what the financial analysis would reveal for hyperconverged infrastructure, compare the two, and then be able to derive your very specific ROI.
You know, I'd be interested to know who the leading vendors are in the hyperconverged solutions market.
So for the market that we're engaging with, primarily in mid-market commercial, enterprise, and maybe some enterprise select customers, most of the solutions that we see that they're evaluating include Nutanix, EMC, Cisco, and SimpliVity. Some of the manufacturers are very agnostic, take a very software-defined approach. Some of the manufacturers primarily address the concerns around compute and storage consumption or provisioning and continued utilization optimization. And then other manufacturers actually address all the elements in the converged stack, which includes compute, storage, as well as networking. At the end of the day, what's important is that we understand that each unique customer scenario is unique, and that although each one of these different solutions that are represented in the marketplace have unique advantages, it's important to realize that some are optimal for customers that are mostly concerned around the provisioning and automation of compute and storage resources, while other manufacturers extend that to include the network as well. Depending on the customer environment, one versus another solution may be more advantageous, which might translate to a better business outcome. So I would say that it's very important for customers to understand who the market leaders are, to understand that there's continuous innovation, then based on their very specific and unique applications, that they evaluate the options that are available to them today.
Could you just offer a brief case study type success story about an organization, perhaps a client that benefited from a hyperconverged implementation?
Yeah, so I'm thinking back on an organization that was experiencing what we call hypergrowth, meaning growth year over year that was greater than 100%. And what was happening is that they went with what they were familiar with, which was an integrated infrastructure stack. And effectively, they were investing in silos. They were investing in various compute, storage, and networking. And what had happened was, as the needs continued to grow from a business perspective, they continued to go down that path. And what they realized is that in order for them to improve IT operations, they couldn't continue to do what they had done in the past. So as they continued to build out that infrastructure, it became increasingly complex. It was difficult for them to manage. And what they said was, hey, you know what? We need to start to be able to improve the management of this system. We cannot move forward with continuously adding additional staff to be able to support this and represent that we're being more efficient. So ultimately, they were looking for a solution that had a single pane of glass for them to be able to more effectively manage the complete data center. And when we say complete data center, we're talking about the compute, storage, network, and virtualization components that make up that data center application environment. And they want to make sure that as they continue to grow, because they were a hyper-growth company, that they were able to scale their compute, storage, and cache independently. And that's a really important differentiator for some of the solutions that we could recommend. Some scale out linearly, where you add compute, storage, and networking as a node, and others give you the flexibility of making a determination of what your applications need, and therefore say, okay, you know what, this particular application is compute dependent, we're going to add a compute node. Hey, this particular application is storage dependent, we're going to add a storage node. And the flexibility to be able to scale based on the application needs is a more cost-effective option. So in this scenario, they went with the Cisco HyperFlex solution, and they made a determination that was best for them. In terms of actual measurable business outcome, they realized an 80% reduction in the amount of time it took to deploy the solution versus the competing alternative, which was an integrated stack. So time for provisioning, time to value was dramatically improved. They saw a 300% plus improvement in their application response time. So for them, what they used as application response time was how long it took for a screen refresh to occur within their practice management software. So if something took 6 seconds, it was now nearly instantaneous. So when you have practitioners and folks using that practice management application software on a daily basis, that time adds up, and that translates to improved productivity of their employees. And now they have a single pane of glass to manage all the elements of the application infrastructure, including the compute, storage, as well as the network.
We'll now hear several best practices for implementing a hyperconverged environment and conclude with added thoughts and advice from our expert, Leo Galletta. In this report, we discussed the challenges CIOs and business leaders are facing today in their effort to reduce the cost and complexity of the enterprise data center. We then explored the world of the hyperconverged infrastructure and learned how this rising star can help organizations meet their critical IT goals. We then talked about the benefits, challenges, cost, and ROI associated with a hyperconverged environment. Next, we'll conclude with several best practices and added thoughts and advice from our expert, Leo Galletta. Now, Leo, could you recap your advice today in the form of several best practices for implementing a hyperconverged environment?
Mike, what I would say is that there's no two customer scenarios that are exactly the same. It's important to understand the customer's private and public cloud strategy, not only today, but well into the foreseeable future, because what we understand is that the consumption of this asset is over an extended period of time, and that would serve as the basis for the investment in a hyperconverged infrastructure solution as part of that private cloud strategy. As part of the due diligence, we'd recommend going through a vendor selection process. It's important to understand and have a detailed understanding of how the current business critical applications are performing in their current infrastructure from a compute, a storage, and network perspective. And ultimately, we want to use these insights to make a very specific, informed solution recommendation. And based on the rate of innovation that's occurring in the market today, we understand that on a quarter-over-quarter or half-over-half basis, that there's new entrants into the market. But again, we would recommend that our customers consider Tier 1 solutions. I would say that you should go with a solution that meets your needs today, that's viable well into the future, and that at the end of the day have extensibility into public cloud consumption.
Leo, look down the road a bit. What does the future look like for the hyperconverged market?
Mike, we're looking at accelerated adoption. Organizations that we're working with are looking to drive business outcomes around reducing cost and mitigating risk in their IT environment. Hyperconverged infrastructure solution from a Tier 1 manufacturer helps reduce multi-vendor complexity, which is inherent in an integrated stack, which is most common in our current customer production environments. Will result in improved business critical application performance, as we had highlighted earlier in a case study, and ultimately lower total cost of ownership. And that low total cost of ownership primarily comes through a reduction in operational expenses by leveraging some of the inherent features of automation, continuous data protection and optimization inherent in a hyperconverged infrastructure stack.
Leo Galletta, President and CEO of Converged Technology Group, thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience on this interesting and timely topic.
Thank you for the opportunity to share our experiences with you and with the viewers.
That completes our report, The Hyperconverged Infrastructure, an Introduction. I'm Michael Quinlan, and thanks for watching.